and welcome back to Share Truth Apply Scripture. I'm Jordan Shambly, joined by Cedra Sarton. I was about to say Wesley Wildman, but he is not here today.
Do I look like?
No. I'm so used to just rattling off. Joined by Wesley Wildman and Cedra Sarton, but today just joined by Cedra Sarton and our intern Maddie King.
Oh, that's not a letdown, though.
No, hey, you know what?
You look at me and you're like, joined by
Oh, no, yeah, no. No, it's not that way at all, you know. Okay, so anyway, we're joined by these two, Cedra and Maddie. Maddie's our intern. As I said in the last segment, if you want to look at her articles, go to engagemagazine.net. There's a ton of them up there. She's a really prolific writer and has a lot to say and a lot of energy.
I have a lot on my mind.
Right, yeah. I mean,
if you have trouble finding her, click the tab at the top that says authors.
Exactly.
And just look up my picture and my little name.
Yeah, and you see Maddie King, click on it, and it'll show you all the articles.
All of her articles, and they're really good. So we have her on today because in the last segment we were talking about the struggles that are kind of particular to high school. So things like peer pressure, friends, and how to deal with bad decisions that you could potentially make. And this is specifically from the point of view of a Christian. So we're going to transition a little bit and talk about looking ahead to college. And that is where Maddie is right now.
That's what inspired this
conversation. I actually have a month until college.
Yeah, so the fun's about to begin, let me tell you. Well, and like I said in the last segment, our experiences were a little different. So my experience in college, I was an online student all the way through, you know. So I was doing everything in my pajamas.
Lucky.
Yeah.
I tried.
I mean, I probably could show up my PJs and be like, "Hey, what's up?"
I tried to do PJs, but that was like strictly banned.
Yeah. Well, who knows?
But I didn't exactly finish college because I'm not exactly college material.
Yeah.
But I was able to get a job and eventually work myself to this position here.
No, that's good. But do we want to get into that though in this episode? We'll save that for another episode, whether or not you should finish college.
Forget that.
Okay.
Because we have thoughts on that.
We do have thoughts on that. I think it's not a bad thing to finish college.
But we don't want to influence Maddie. Her
Obviously,
parents might also say,
you
told her not to go to college? No.
Her mom's going to show up.
My mom's going to show up and be like, what
She'll
did you just
never
tell my
intern with you again. No, we don't want to do that.
No, mom won't be like that.
Her mom makes some really bomb brownies, so I want those to come back.
Oh, they will.
They will. If she doesn't, I can make them because I know how to make it too.
So, Maddie, our advice to you is you should listen to your mom and do everything she says.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, so hopefully that earning us some brownie points.
Really?
So let's talk to Maddie. What are your, just right now, what do you think you're gonna do? So you're right out of high school. You're looking ahead. I know you want to go into writing.
Yes, that's a definite. I've actually been wanting to be a writer since I was in 6th grade.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yesterday, I actually found the first book I ever wrote.
Yeah,
it was to my little sister because she loved horses and she was 6, so I wrote a little horse book. It was really cute.
Oh, man. I love that. Like, me and my wife were cleaning out from under the bed like we should do more often. That's on me. And I found my notebook full of things from things that I wrote from my childhood. And it's all super cheesy and stuff. But it was just such a cool thing to find.
It's cheesy. Obviously, you're like 10, 11, and then you see it and you're like, oh, this is the first thing I ever wrote.
Yeah. And sometimes you can look back and you can say, I wrote way better back then than I do now. What happened? That's for me anyway. But yeah, so you're wanting to write. So does that mean an English degree for you? Is that what you're looking at?
I'm going in for an English major, yeah.
Okay.
And I was thinking even possibly a minor in music because I listen to music 24/7.
Yeah. Well, I listen to music. I have to listen to music too while I'm writing because even if there's no noise around me, I cannot write in perfect silence.
Yeah, I have to have music.
Yeah. So when I went to college, I was pursuing that as well. I was pursuing an English degree. I ended up finishing just shy of earning an English degree. But my excuse for doing that is I took all the English courses. So what was left was math and stuff, and you don't need that as an English person. So anyway,
at least it's only for one semester though.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm looking forward to because high school I take it every year. College, one semester and I'm done.
Yeah. Well, that is a relief, especially for us writers. But Cedra, you went into what were you looking to do?
I was a history major.
A history major.
Yes, with a minor in biblical studies, and so I got through 2 semesters of that, and I was like, I'm not a school person.
Yeah. Well,
I'm a school person.
Yeah, and I do think that there are expectations out there that are, I mean, and I know we said we wouldn't get into this, but there are expectations out there that might be a little unfair, maybe a little dated, that say
Yeah.
you're not going to get a job unless you get a degree. I
Mm-hmm.
think we are living examples that that's not necessarily
Well,
true.
even me, I'm straight out of high school and
Yeah.
I'm writing articles for AFA.
Yeah, exactly. So, man, I really want to get into that, but that is
No,
another
another topic,
episode. Yeah,
another
please
topic.
keep me on
So
track.
now kind of
keep me on track.
where we want to go with this is,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any like fears as
Mhm.
you see a lot in the news, in media, you see so many things happening on college campuses where students are having these different ideas, just sinfulness pushed at
Yeah.
them and being painted as a good thing. And anybody who doesn't agree with that is hateful
Right.
to them. So, I mean, do you have any fears when it comes to going to college and the things that you're going to face there as a Christian?
Well, I'm kind of like how God's not dead. My mom actually
Mm.
went through this too, but how some professors are strictly against Christianity,
Mm.
and I am a very strong Christian, so I'm
Right.
worried about like having to deal with them and the discussions I will have with them, and in fact, if them dropping me from the class.
Right.
Or it
Wow.
affecting your grades and things like that? You
Mm.
know, around here, usually people have not had to face it nearly as bad, but it is,
Yeah.
it's still
It still
happening.
happens.
Mhm.
And so you have so many, you see movies like you mentioned, God's Not Dead,
Yeah.
Mhm.
where a professor brought up the topic of Christianity and basically considered it ludicrous.
Yeah.
The whole idea of believing in a God, and and then in the movie, the student that was the main character, whose name I cannot remember, I've seen it, but he had a challenge. He challenged that as a Christian, and it could have completely ruined his
Right.
college career, which with such a big emphasis on that today, as you said earlier, um,
Mhm.
it could have ruined his chances to become what he wanted. Because from some things, you do need a college degree.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You
That-
do
yeah.
need to learn that. So,
Mhm.
so that's just kind of the reason why we wanted to discuss this.
Mhm.
Discuss the things that you might face.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think too, going into it, into college as a Christian, and my parents reminded me of this too, that an education, whether you go to school for an education or you're just learning from experience, is important because you have a mind given to you by God to be a good steward of. And that was a helpful way for me to frame college going into it, because I personally, I hated the idea of going to college. I had all these misconceptions about it, honestly, and I would hear people talking about college debt. Thankfully, I avoided that. But it was helpful for me to frame it that way, so that I could see, okay, I don't know exactly what God has for me
Yeah.
in the future, but I have this opportunity here to gain tools, to be equipped to do whatever those things are. Whether it's God has one thing for me to do in life or multiple things, having that preparation ahead of time, even if you don't see the relevance of it, is very helpful, and that was a very helpful way for me to think of it going into it.
well, a lot of people I know, most people I know, are excited about the idea of college.
Right.
They're
Yes.
excited about the quote unquote college experience.
Because they're always excited about being on their own, away from the parents.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of
Uh-huh.
the way it's painted now. You watch TV shows, and it's painted as a time to let loose.
And to live life to the fullest, because you're
Yeah.
never going to do it again. It's your time to go crazy, and then when you're an adult, you'll just look back on it and say, why did I do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
if that's how you're
Uh-huh.
living, if you're going to do that, then why are you
And
doing
that's such
it?
a good thing to bring up too, like how our culture paints that, because in those TV shows, like you might have an older person, be it a professor or a parent or something, looking at these college kids, and if they're not the ones that are being annoyed by them, they're the ones who are like living vicariously through them and saying, "Oh, I remember those glory days of me, being just a wild, carefree young person." And being able to do all these things that I can't do now as a respectable adult.
Yes. They
And,
always portray that
man,
in every movie,
Yeah.
every show.
Yeah, and
So-
how twisted that is.
See, they're kind of like putting that idea in our heads already, even before we get to college. So they're saying, oh, you can do whatever you want. You can live how you want to live without anyone telling you to do so.
Right. And there will be no regrets.
Exactly.
Because when you become an adult, you're just going to miss it. And that's going to be the only cost.
Exactly, but
wow, that's so not true, though.
Really
I mean,
isn't.
anybody you talk to who had or anybody that I know who had a more that I guess traditional
That
college
wild
experience
college
now,
experience.
yeah, they don't miss it. They regret
actually
it.
hate
Yeah.
how they live their life
It's
during that
embarrassing.
time.
Yeah,
So.
and I think that goes into our culture, whether intentionally or not, trying to convince us that college age is not quite adult. You're not quite an adult yet, and so you're not expected to act like one.
Well, just because you're not an adult doesn't mean you need to act a little responsible.
Right,
Because
yeah.
I've discovered that through so many things. Because
Yeah.
y'all know I can sometimes act like I'm 5. So.
Well, I think what I've learned working with adults is that a lot of adults can act like they're 5 sometimes.
Yes,
Exactly.
they can.
Yes, I can name.
I like how
many.
you looked in my direction.
Well, I was
Yeah.
trying to get your
It was
response to that,
like-
not saying here's an example.
But it felt
but-
more like look at this sitting next to me over here.
No, I can act like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Sometimes you know that.
Yeah, not nearly
and sometimes it's
so
fine. Sometimes it's fine in an appropriate situation. But
Yeah, but depends on the
Yeah.
situation you're in, really.
yeah.
But I'm also like, I've decided to commute where I can live at home because not only is it cheaper, but I've also heard stories from friends and family of what goes on in dorms. So I wanted to stay
Yeah.
away from that temptation as well.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's a good idea too. I mean, for multiple reasons. I don't think there's anything wrong.
Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but there are
Yeah.
certain temptations that can be thrown at you.
Yeah.
I was lucky for my brief college experience. I went to a Baptist college where rules were very strict on things like males in girl dorms and girls in the guys dorms. You know, like that was like banned.
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you could not be up in the dorms. The only time they could be up there is like moving days.
Yeah.
When they were helping carry stuff, and that is the only time. And so it really wasn't. If anybody wanted to get into some trouble, a lot of times they would have to, like any real trouble,
Yeah.
you would have to go off campus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for anybody looking at college options, there are options out there. And I know that certain schools carry more weight in their name, I guess, and you know, you might be pressured to choose, oh, this is a famous school or this is a well-known school for this reason. But looking at a school that not only feeds you intellectually and academically, but feeds you spiritually, or at least provides an environment where you can survive spiritually, where it's not going to just sap your walk with the Lord. I think that's an important factor to look at too. And if you have to, like Maddie, there's nothing wrong with commuting, staying with family members, your parents still, if they're okay with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You shouldn't be embarrassed about that, because your primary goal here is to make sure that what you're doing, you're sharpening your faculties, your mind and your spirit to serve the kingdom of God. That's what we hope you do here at Engage Magazine, and hope you continue to share truth and apply Scripture. We'll see you next week.